Viewers, Divya has worked in the advertising industry and helped build brands by understanding consumers for the last 18 years. She's worked with the best multinational companies, JWT and Lolintas, whether it's Unilever or Diageo or any other. So it's a real privilege. We'd be listening to Divya's views. So Divya, first of all, I'd start with a category which I feel is very challenging category to advertise in our country. Could you share any of your insights while you were working on Antiquity, Black Dog, Signature, all these brands? Or did you witness any trends, insights that surprised you and led to any innovative marketing tactics?
Okay, so like you said, Jasravee, it is a very, very challenging category. Challenging because it's also one of the most regulated markets, and actually the regulations also change state to state. The brands that I worked on were very vast. I worked on both beer as well as whiskey. Yeah. And it was very interesting because, on one level, yes, it is kind of prohibited and you have to be very careful. Yeah. The other thing was also, what I found was with USL Diageo, which was the main client, as well as the UB group. I found that, the companies themselves were a little ahead. Norms of what we can say and can't say, and where we can advertise and what we can do, were actually more strict than what the government would have prescribed. So that was quite inspiring to see that, that kind of, internal restrictions were there in place. So for example, USL Diageo had their own internal code of conduct, and every year they did a workshop for all the marketing teams and the agency teams to refresh that code of conduct, to make sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do.
Could you take an example on, what kind of code of conduct? Because, liquor category and being so responsible is very interesting and very useful for us to know.
Yeah. So for example, they actually had a ban on things like, in FMCG, buy one, get one is a very common kind of a promotional tactic. That's something that the liquor brands I worked on refused to do, because that would encourage irresponsible drinking. So they didn't want to be in a position where they could be, held responsible for leading consumers astray. If consumers want to drink, we can't really control how much they're going to drink, but we are not going to be encouraging them to kind of overdo it. So that was something which was very inspiring. And then it helps you work on the brand also, because that everybody has the same kind of code and ethics and integrity, and you want to do the best for your consumers. You don't want to do bad for your consumers. So that was one very interesting thing. In terms of the challenges for marketing, because it's not so much about the product and you can't really talk about the product, it became more about the occasion. Each brand and each product actually had this kind of space of, this is my consumption occasion. This is the mood that I want to be a part of. So either it would be, matching the mood of the consumer at that occasion, or maybe even creating the mood for the consumer, so whether it is celebration, which is a great space for beer, or whether it is, even in whiskey, I worked on two which had actually very different positioning. So Signature was all about, celebrating achievements and, accomplishments, and for people who are kind of on the move, to celebrate the fact that they're moving up in life. Whereas something like Black Dog, actually for people who also were achievers and had also got certain accomplishments, but it was for those moments of contemplation, where it's a much more intimate setting and it's more introspective, and so you're trying to create a mood for the product to be consumed in, and that was a very interesting thing. So you move away from the product and you're creating kind of an atmosphere and ambience for it.
In this COVID year, I know you're not associated right now with the brands, but you have a deep understanding of the category. If you had to think about and share with us how these brands are adapting to the changed circumstances, because everybody in the crazy COVID year is either making safer choices or down trading. So how do you think, and also the fact that online events are happening, actual events are not happening, which is typically used to generate trials, as well as, engage the consumer. So,
the thing is, like, you can't do events, so at home consumption, but typically none of these brands have encouraged at home consumption. If you see all the alcohol brands, including competitors, they always show it in an out of home context. Nobody really shows it being consumed at home. So that is something that, they have to think about, because the mood that they've created and all is all outside of the home.
Actually, and this is very interesting that out of home consumption moods have been associated with these brands so far, and everything, whether it is exercising or celebrations, everything, home has become the destination. So it'll be very interesting to see how, at least for now, the brands adapt.
Right.
Like you were saying that these brands have been very cutting edge and, taking on the latest tools in the marketing toolbox. And I've also seen that you have a fascination for everything neuro, Divya. You've studied neuroscience, neuroeconomics, and neuromarketing, and I'm sure you've used it also. I want you to share, for our viewers, how do you put it in perspective that neuromarketing, do you think it is an added asset in the toolbox? Does it provide any extra precision?
So first of all, I have to give credit to all the alcohol beverage brands that I worked on for my interest in neuro, because they did test a lot of things through neuroscience. And one of the reasons is that, like I said, you don't talk so much about the product in this category. Yeah. So what you're selling is basically imagery, emotions, moods, and those things are very hard to measure in a rational way. In market research, we always look at system 1 and system 2, right? Mm-hmm. So system 2 is what consumers will say, what they will do, and what things that you can measure and try and be rational about. But we all know, even somebody with 2 years experience would know, not necessarily as much experience as you have, but even somebody with 2 years experience will tell you that just because they say something doesn't mean that that is true, right? Yeah. So, system 1 is very important. The unconscious responses, the unconscious attractions that we have, the desires we have, those things are things which, even if we were to look at ourselves as consumers, we are not able to explain adequately. Yes. So I think neuroscience comes in with all those implicit testing. So while we have projective techniques and we have a lot of other tools which help us kind of get to the deeper things which, consumers themselves are not aware of. Yeah. I think neuroscience is very exciting because it's evolving with brain science, So, those methods are now becoming more easily available. So with EEG and eye tracking and all of that, you can actually measure and see which areas of the brain are getting stimulated. Yeah. And the evolving brain science is telling you what those areas of brain are associated with. But it's a good addition because it kind of helps explain the things which we don't really know as yet. And for categories which are not very rational themselves. So, nor are we marketing it on a very rational level, nor are consumers consuming it on a very rational level. And therefore, you need to measure that level. You can't be just measuring the norm. So it's not like I there are 10 benefits of the product. I've explained it in the ad, and then the consumer has to play it back to me. Here the benefits are very subjective, very emotional, and very difficult to pinpoint.
Yeah. So has there been a moment where you felt that, oh, this is something that only neuromarketing could have told?
Okay, so my experience with neuromarketing is limited because I've not done the neuromarketing myself. It's very technical, so obviously I'm not in a place to do it. But I have sat through a lot of reports and explanations with the neuroscience team at Nielsen. So what they do is they actually have a doctor who studies brain science, who is a part of every presentation, so he can help answer questions and help clarify things. So I really like their approach. Mm-hmm. I value that kind of collaboration and partnership. Right. Some of the things, like when you're watching an ad, so like I'll talk about ad testing since both of us are familiar, and that is where more of my experience is. So, when we are testing an ad, and remember, an ad in a liquor space is about a mood and a emotion and a moment, and it's not really about the product at all. There's very little rational information in it. Yes. So, what Nielsen Neuro actually uses a combination of eye tracking and EEG. to measure the response to the ad. And what they do is they'll of course take a very large sample and then average it out, and then that's how you can interpret the data. And what they do is very interesting, is they have a moment by moment analysis. So they'll play back the ad, and as they're playing back the ad, they'll have some critical measures like engagement or attention or things like that, and it'll go up as a graph. So you can actually see in the ad which are the moments that are getting that where attention is spiking, and which are the moments where attention is kind of faltering. And while obviously you can't know, you know, as a storyteller also, you would know you can't have an ad that is high attention all the time, because then there is no surprise, there's going to be very little persuasion. But the interesting thing is that when you know that the attention is spiking, you can actually make sure that your branding is prominent at that place. You know, so I know that this is the high point and this is where the consumer's attention is maximum. So at this point, I make sure that my branding is also prominent, and I know through eye tracking that, you know, which are the parts that they're looking at, and that is where my brand needs to be placed, or, you know, so it kind of helps us monitor and understand. I found that very exciting, was this kind of precision you can't get through, you know, normal qualitative and quantitative testing. Right.
You've been writing a lot, Divya, and I've read some of your articles, and we've had discussions about Byron Sharp and his book as well. What is that one thing that you felt most useful in terms of his perspectives?
So actually, I'm a big fan of Byron Sharp, and the reason for that is actually because, you know, everything he says and does is all based on empirical in-market data.
Yeah.
So first of all, he has not done market research separately. He has tested market data.
Yeah.
And all these big companies like Unilever and Diageo and all of that actually share data with his university. Yeah. So it is all based on data. And if it's based on data, in fact, you can't really throw it away and say this is not working. So, you know, he's not saying anything which he's not tested out and shown. You know, it's a very simple thing. Like, you know, if you travel, like I have a few friends, we travel every few years together. And one of the things is we are all fond of food, and, you know, it's very important that we eat at the right place. We want to try all the local food. Yeah. And, you know, my friend always says that, you know, the best way to choose a restaurant is to see that, you know, that it's occupied, that there are a lot of people there. If there are very few people in the restaurant, then let's not go there because it's probably not good. But a restaurant where there are a lot of people will be very good. And that's exactly what Byron Sharp says. You know, he says that popular brands tend to become more popular. Yeah. And the reason is because a popular brand is always the safe choice, right? Yeah. It's like Bata, right? Yeah. I remember the first time I went abroad and I saw a Bata shop and I was shocked. I was shocked that I thought Bata was an Indian brand, and it's not, you know. So, you know, the thing is, it's familiarity. Popular brands build familiarity, and they also build trust and credibility. If so many people are using it and they seem happy with it, then it can't be a bad choice. It's a safe choice.
Definitely. And this whole debate about distinctiveness and differentiation, that you know, distinctiveness matters, differentiation doesn't. And I know you have a strong point of view on this. Would you like to share that?
Yeah. So I think see, it's important to be like, for example, Pepsi and Coke, right? You know, we know that in blind taste tests, and I found the same thing with whiskey, that when you go to the actual consumers, they don't really know the difference between their preferred brand and the brand they say they don't like in a blind taste test. Yeah. You know, yes, there are experts and there are connoisseurs, and they would be able to know the difference, but most consumers don't know the difference. This is sweeter and that is not sweet, and this is bitter, and you have all those things which you talk about. But the fact of the matter is that it's not a perceivable difference if I don't know actually what brand I'm thinking. So the reason the consumer is choosing the brand is not the actual differentiation. What the consumer is choosing is the distinctiveness. Because when I drink a Coke, I feel a certain way and I feel I'm part of a certain community, versus when I see, or when I drink a signature whiskey or a Black Dog whiskey, I feel like I'm, you know, it's kind of reinforcing if I have about myself. Yeah. So distinctiveness is important, because distinctiveness you can't copy. Differentiation can change very quickly, right? We know, especially in this era of technology, you know, your competitors can catch up with you very quickly. I remember, you know, there was a time when we were growing up where there was a clear difference between an Indian brand and a foreign brand. You know, there would be a price difference, of course, but more than the price difference, you know, you would know in the product quality. And today, some of the Indian brands have overtaken the foreign brands in quality, because, you know, that technology is available to them and the price difference is not that much, you know. So, you know, you can see that today differentiation can build distinctiveness. But distinctiveness is going to be what will, it's like what Martin Lindstrom calls the smashables, right? It's like he says, if you can break a bottle, he thinks the bottle of Coke is very iconic, the glass bottle that they have in the US. He's saying if you smash it, with every piece, you can still tell that it's still a Coke, and that is what distinctiveness is. So you need those kind of brand assets so that consumers can associate with you and say, okay, this is my brand. And it also becomes a choice, a reason to choose the brand.
So it's something that the consumer can perceive. You might have built into the product, but if it doesn't reach the consumer, it doesn't build as a consistent association in the consumer's mind, then it's not there. Right. Now we move to another chapter of Divya's career. It's a Unilever brand, RIN. And, it's a long association, and we want to benefit from your understanding, Divya, of how the middle class has evolved. So what we find very interesting, in case of RIN, not just in the way they are advertising, even in the variants that we have come up with, like the smart home technology or the antibacterial variant, or talking to young adults, it's very different from how the middle class home care brands would be, communicating and who they would be targeting.
So actually, RIN is a brand which is very, very close to my heart because I loved working on it. I had the best teams, best clients, the best bosses on this brand. So it was an amazing journey. And I think also the consumers, I think this brand team was a very good example of putting the consumer first and center all the time. So all of the things that you talked about which make the brand distinctive are actually decisions that were made very consciously because they were keeping the consumer in mind all the time. So RIN as a brand actually is very, very anchored towards serving the lower middle class consumers. And one of the values that the brand shares with the consumer is ambition. The lower middle class over time, so in India, it's currently on an upward trajectory. And what we found, like, when I first started working on the brand, the consumers I was meeting were a lot poorer than the consumers I had met so far. And I was a little apprehensive, because, coming from the kind of privileged backgrounds we have, you kind of cringe a little bit when you have to see somebody who is not having the best life. And so the consumers just blew me away, and I found them so inspiring because, they did not look at their life circumstances the way I was looking at their life circumstances, They, first of all, they sensed the mood of the country, and they were seeing opportunity everywhere. They were seeing the economy opening up. They were seeing opportunities not just in education, but opportunities outside of education appearing for them and for their children. And one of the big things is that, all the reality shows that were kind of taking off at that time. So Indian Idol, Kaun Banega Crorepati. I don't know if they intended it that way, but that's certainly the way these programs have evolved, that a lot of the contestants who tend to come from kind of underprivileged backgrounds, people who've not had the best of opportunities, and yet they have this amazing talent. So all of this was firing the imagination of the lower middle class. So it's not that, my child has won Kaun Banega Crorepati, but the fact that my child could, somebody like my child is winning all this money, somebody like my child is winning all this opportunity, somebody like my child has, got this amazing career in singing or dancing or acting or in sports. You see all the stories of the sports, the athletes of India who have, come up, whether it's in shooting or wrestling, So all of this had fired the imagination of the lower middle class, and I found them very, very aspirational. So they weren't looking at the current reality. The current reality was, one, better than where their parents were because things have improved in India. Lifestyle has become a little better, but also they were also seeing where they can go. The family's ambitions tend to be centered on that young person, so the mother may be buying the laundry detergent and washing the laundry and all of that, but all her ambitions are centered on the son or the daughter who's going to wear that shirt and achieve big things for the family. So, that was one of the reasons of showing that, because if you wanted to, showcase and celebrate their ambition, you needed to show it on the person whom it was most appropriate. And
yes, I can changes everything. Like just the being able to see a possibility and having an ambition changes everything.
Right.
And until
Right.
unless we mention lower socioeconomic class, this could be said for actually any person in the world.
Yeah, it can be said about anybody in the world, but the beauty of it is that this group really has the drive and the hunger. It's not the same for somebody. Somebody like me, I also have an ambition, I also want to achieve it, but I don't have that underlying desperation and urgency that they have.
Yeah.
And that really makes them, it kind of drives them to a level which probably I don't know if I can even go.
And yeah, I'm completely with you, and thank you for contextualizing and nuancing this so beautifully. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yes.
also one more point about the younger people in this segment. They have grown up in a world which is different from the world their parents were a little afraid. They
Yeah.
kind of grew up in this very this very class based system, very conscious of their limitations, very conscious of their boundaries.
Yeah.
Whereas this generation has grown up in a much more democratic, far less apologetic than their parents. They are actually much more assertive, and they feel entitled to the rewards of their labor. So they are not that bade baap ki bigri aulad kind of a thing where things will be handled to them on a platter, and they don't expect that. But they certainly expect that whatever work I do, it is going to show some reward at the end of it. So while luck is important always in India, they don't rely so much on luck as much as they rely on themselves, and that's actually quite inspiring to see.
Yes. That changes the whole game of life, actually. So
yeah, you wanted to know about the variants as well.
Yeah.
The RIN variants. Yeah, so like I said, this team has been very, very customer focused. So like for example, water saving makes a lot of sense for RIN, because water problems are an issue. Water supply is an issue in a lot of the country. So a lot of consumers, the water supply is inadequate, or it's hard water, it's not soft, it has a certain problem with it. The other thing is also that laundry is a very water intensive activity. So, out of all the things that they do in the house, probably it takes the largest amount of water. And so giving them a water saving variant was actually a very good solution to a problem that they were facing. So having a water saving detergent actually makes a lot of sense for them, because they can't afford to pay premium after premium for tankers of water to be delivered to them just to do the laundry.
Yeah.
Similarly, a washing machine variant, because as the penetration of washing machines go up, and like I said, this is an aspiring class, so they are not limited. There was a time when I remember when I was growing up, my mother would say, we are upper middle class and this is the brand we'll buy. So that is why those tiered things. But today consumers are not limited by their price bracket. We go up and down very easily. So a very rich person might still buy a discount detergent or a discount toothpaste. They might drive a Rolls Royce, but they might use the cheapest soap that they can find. It doesn't matter. And similarly, even upward mobility is also possible. There are EMIs, there is easy consumer finance. So if you want something now in today's India, you don't really slot yourself that way. You manage your budget by kind of going up on some things and going down on some things, but you certainly there's nothing that you cannot access. So and especially in detergents and FMCG products, it's a one-time put-down price. If for 1 month the consumer wants to stretch and buy an Ariel or a Surf Excel, they'll do that. You can't really dictate to them. So if that similarly, they can get consumer finance and they can buy washing machines. And we did see that in this consumer segment, people were buying washing machines. If you're buying washing machines, you need to upgrade to a detergent that will work with the machine. The same detergent will not work with hand washing as it works with a washing machine. So or else the washing machine could get really spoiled. So it just made sense, as the segment, our customer segment is buying washing machines, then we need to give them a washing machine variant.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you so much for coming to Jagged with Jasravee.
Yes, thank you so much, Jasravee. This was really fun.